Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webcast, Optimizing Backup and Disaster Recovery for Your VM Environment, brought to you by Information Week, NETGEAR, and broadcast by United Business Media Limited. I'm Paul Korzanowski, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we begin, we have a few announcements. You can participate in the Q&A session later in the broadcast by asking questions at any time during this webcast. Just type your question into the Ask a Question text area below the video window and then click the Submit button. At this time, we recommend that you disable your pop-up blockers. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. You may download a copy by clicking on the Download Slide button, also located below the presentation window. And if you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our Tech Webcast Help Guide by clicking on the Help link below the media player. In addition, you can contact our Technical Support Helpline, which is also located in the Webcast Help Guide. And now on to the presentation, Optimizing Backup and Disaster Recovery for Your VM Environment. Discussing today's topic is Drew Meyer, Senior Director of Product Marketing at NETGEAR. He brings extensive experience in the network storage area with an emphasis on NAS, iSCSI, and IPSAN, Ethernet, and backup concepts and technologies. Prior to joining NETGEAR, Mr. Meyer held positions at product marketing and field marketing at NetApp, Adaptec, Snap Appliance, Quantum, and Micron Electronics. Peter Chen is Technical Marketing Engineer for the Commercial Business Unit of NETGEAR. He specializes in Internet security as well as network storage and has more than 8 years of experience in the IT industry. Rick Vanover is Product Strategy Specialist at Veeam Software. He is a respected VM pundit with extensive virtualization experience. He is a writer, blogger, former IT infrastructure management, and host for the Veeam Community Podcast. Rick lives in Columbus, Ohio. And Rick Tapar is owner of Data Coordination. His background includes 10 years of network engineering for a machine manufacturer in the corrugated industry, with 2 years as network and engineering sales at an ISP/consulting firm. He currently holds a full-time position with a major manufacturer of outdoor power equipment while continuing research into new technologies that would benefit clients. And now on to the presentation. Drew, I think you're the first speaker up.
That's great. Thanks, Paul. And welcome, everybody. I had no idea I was in such amazing company here when you lead those bios like that. We're here today to talk about VMware Backup and Disaster Recovery Solutions. I work with NETGEAR. We've brought our friends from Veeam online to talk about a complete solution. We've got some technical expertise with Peter Chen to walk through a demonstration at the end on exactly how everything fits together. And most importantly, we're really pleased to have Rich DePass online with us. Rich is a NETGEAR Veeam customer. He's a specialist in building solutions like this, and he'll actually be able to go through a real-life implementation, so it's beyond just what we think it should be as vendors. It's actually how it works in the real world. But before we get into that stuff, we've got a couple of things to talk about. First, what's going on in the market? What's the reality of the challenges around backup in a VMware environment? What's happening with NETGEAR in our storage practice? Some things that you may not be aware of in terms of NETGEAR as a storage vendor. Talk a little bit about Veeam and what they can provide with their products, and then we'll talk about where Rich was able to implement this successfully in reality, and then go through the demonstration at the end. It's important to ask, I think it's important to ask questions. I'm really excited to hear from you guys. Since you have the industry guys like us on the phone available to take those questions, we'll do whatever we can to make sure they're answered during this session. So feel free to send those in using the questions and answers tab up there at the top of the screen. So NETGEAR. A lot of folks are not quite aware of who we've become in the last few years, and I want to touch on that. We're now a billion-dollar company, and what's extraordinary to me and what's exciting is that we're a part of this is that we grew 40% plus year over year last quarter in our quarterly earnings announcement. In an economy that's struggling as difficult as it is, a lot of people are trying to figure out a way to be successful, and we've hit on a few things that are working well for us as a company, but the only way we're successful as a company is if our channel partners and our end user customers are also successful. So that's contributing to this. We've separated into 3 independent separate business units. A retail one, which most people are well aware of. We're now the world's leading vendor of retail routers. We see us in Best Buy on the shelf. We're ahead of Linksys and Cisco in that space now. That's why most people know us, but it only contributes about 1/3 of the entire company revenue. We sell a ton of equipment to service providers, 60 ISPs all around the world. If you buy from Comcast or AT&T, the modem on the end of the service provider's line in your house is manufactured by NETGEAR. There's over 30 million customers around the world depending on us for their service provider connections. And finally, the commercial business unit, where I work and where the team here is representing. The commercial business unit is another 1/3 of that revenue, and we've been involved with over 20 million businesses worldwide, finding a place to give business-class products without the complicated traditional IT vendor price and complexity levels. And I'll touch on that a little bit in a moment, a little bit more. In terms of the market, what's happening, why is this relevant? Well, mid-market companies with less than 500 users are looking more closely than ever at cost. The global economic situations have forced people to do things in new ways. The IT industry is responding with different ways of solving traditional problems. You hear a ton of buzz about cloud. You hear a lot of discussion about mobility. People, end users, are demanding ways to get connected that are not necessarily comfortable or traditional for IT folks to implement, and that means a lot of transition and a lot of change. Virtualization has come on with a massive force, especially in the data center. That's now impacting the lower tier of the market. The smaller companies are putting this in place. And as you'll see today in our case study, that's even effective for very, very small companies. Gartner notes that mid-market virtualization trend is even more aggressive than most people have estimated. So this is happening, and it's happening right now. Separation of server and storage investments, that's another trend here. That means that people aren't necessarily buying storage from their server vendors. So if you bought HP hardware, you bought Dell hardware, maybe there are options to lower the cost or make things simpler by looking at alternative vendors. IDC sees tremendous growth there as well. Virtualization is forecast to grow over 50% this year. And backing up this trend, this is an Infonetics source, 10 gig Ethernet is now happening in this mid-market segment. It grew 136% last year. So as an end user, when these trends converge, you're looking at bigger, fatter pipes, you're looking at higher availability for your servers and applications, and you're looking at ways to network storage to provide common shared pools across all of your resource demands. If you're looking at it from a reseller perspective, as a channel partner, if you're not playing in virtualization spaces with VMware, if you don't have a network storage vendor in your portfolio, and if you're not looking at how to get 10 gigabit Ethernet included, you're missing out on some tremendous market opportunities. What does that mean for NETGEAR? This is probably the most eye-opening slide, at least it always is when I talk to customers and end users and partners. NETGEAR, according to Gartner, has now become the #1 market shareholder in network storage less than $5,000. More importantly, we've become the #4 vendor in network storage less than $25,000. So the leader there is NetApp, perfect for mid-market companies who have a lot more budget and who are looking for slightly higher-end storage solutions. EMC is continuing to decline in share on a negative growth rate. HP is also struggling a little more there. NETGEAR has risen past Dell in terms of market share in unified storage. So what we're delivering to customers and channel partners in regards to a single unified storage platform that's reliable, it's simple, and it's definitely affordable, seems to be working very well. It's contributing to our growth rate, seems to be giving us market share, and Gartner's recognized that. Then the other kind of exciting number is in the terms of the unified storage market overall worldwide, NETGEAR is now the 8th largest storage vendor in the world. That's pretty impressive considering everything we sell is under that $25,000 retail mark, price mark. In fact, it's really under the $15,000 price mark. So there are new ways of dealing with this economic pressure from the global economy shifts, and we're able to do that in some unique ways that make it reliable, affordable, and simple, different than the traditional big IT model. Reliable, affordable, simple to us means things like warranty support. You can't afford to introduce new risk when you change vendors or when you separate your purchasing ideas. So you've got to be able to call somebody who will get on the phone and support that product. You've got to ensure that it fits in your budget. People are asked to do more with less. That's a trite saying, but it's very true. You've got to get more availability. You've got to deal with data doubling every 2 years, but your budget isn't doubling that fast, and neither is your staff. So how do you handle managing all this on the same level of resource investment and cash investment that you've always done? And finally, simplicity. Simplicity kind of ties into the reliability and affordability. If you have to build something with a lot of outside consulting, if you're dependent on a third party for heavy-duty maintenance contracts, if as a channel partner you can't do this with your own team, you have to bring in someone else, then it gets complicated, then it gets more expensive, and it just costs you more money and costs you more time. So smart IT, not big IT, is the way we look at this. Big companies, traditional vendors, they're definitely reliable, but can they be simple and are they affordable? Very small companies or point players, vendors that are doing just one thing, they're probably simple, they're probably affordable, but are they reliable enough for you to trust your business to? And that's kind of where NETGEAR has discovered an opportunity, and, well, obviously it's working out pretty well for us. So why storage from NETGEAR? Everybody has a storage problem. That statistic that I just cited, that IDC ran a survey a couple of months back, and they discovered that data storage is doubling every 2 years. That means no matter what industry, no matter what applications, no matter what size company you are, either you have a storage problem today or you're going to have one tomorrow. And that includes just basic capacity, file sharing, disk-to-disk backup, replication. How do you do disaster recovery in a world where tape can't keep up in terms of performance, especially as that capacity curve rises? People don't always think about it that way. Storage problems are not necessarily sexy. They're not glamorous, but they're absolutely real. And storage becomes a way for our channel partners to get into all kinds of different accounts, and a reality for an end user at every size or every location in their company. So we become an option for mid-market customers to have at the core of their data center in a location that needs, 3 terabyte hard drives by a dual power supply platform with 12 bays in it. There's enough capacity in 36 terabytes to handle the core needs of many mid-market and small and medium-sized businesses. In larger companies that perhaps have an incumbent vendor like NetApp or EMC or HP, does it make sense to continue buying that higher expensive, higher class reliable storage for a disk-to-disk backup target? It doesn't necessarily pay off. Can't go wrong doing that, but it's definitely going to cost you. You're going to pay the price. So we see companies looking at alternative vendors for that secondary storage in mid-market companies. And at the very edge of locations, remote office, branch office, we call this in the industry robo. If you're trying to simplify a branch office, centralize all your capacity on one location so that it's scalable, so that it can be backed up, so that it hosts all of your virtual machines and does your file sharing and cuts down on your licensing and maintenance costs, you need an affordable platform that won't let you down. So for those robo locations, then there's an option for NETGEAR as well. Storage brings other parts of the puzzle along in the discussion. You begin to talk about backup software. You're talking about replacing incumbents there. The same dynamic is happening. The backup software industry is transforming as people change from traditional vendors who may be limited by 50 years of tape and tape automation as the design behind their software. Looking at network infrastructure, backup to disk requires reliable networks, requires high performance, requires segmentation and traffic management. And finally, security. If you're going to be moving stuff around over networks, even between locations, you've got to ensure that your VPNs are stable and reliable, and that maybe even from an edge perspective, as customers, as end users are transferring data back and forth between offices, you want to know exactly what they sent so you don't lose out on particular IP assets that are not meant to leave the office. So our product line, pretty simple, looks like this. We've got a handful of desktop platforms at the low end. That's the Pro 2, the Pro 4, and the Pro 6. And guess what? That has 2 drives, 4 drives, and 6 drives. Those are ideal low-cost consolidation platforms, simple for remote office, branch office, or for very small companies who have a desktop environment next to the printer, maybe on a shelf in a rack that's not densely populated. And then you can go up to some 1U platforms, which come in various different price points. We have some dual power supply options. And then we have our 2U platforms where the density becomes more important, the highest performance is available. We even support 10 gig Ethernet connections on the high end. which obviously are great complements for NETGEAR's 10 gig switches. All of these can be tied together under one single management console. We have some network management software that wraps across all of them. They all support our replication software, which is a key part of the Veeam disaster recovery solution we're speaking about today, so that you don't have to go outside to third-party vendors. You don't have to add additional licensing or hosts in front of the storage. The storage has the intelligence built into it to copy data from one location to another over a secure connection without any fancy configuration of firewalls, additional software hosts configuration, etc. So ReadyNAS has become simple, it's become very affordable, and it's definitely reliable for these types of customer bases, which has contributed to that success we've experienced in market share in the last couple of years. If you have questions about the product line or the software options, feel free to jump on ReadyNAS.com, give us some questions right here. But with that overview of NETGEAR, our position in the market, what's happening in the market driving that, and what we've built in order to address that for our customers, I'd like to pass it on over to Rick Vanover with Veeam to talk about the issues specifically around VMware backup and why, when you have an affordable storage platform, there's an option to change the way things are done on the host side in the VMware world. Rick,
Thanks, Drew. And I definitely want to ride off of his theme because Drew set a perfect tone for the challenge that goes along with backing up virtual machines on VMware. We want a solution that's simple, affordable, and reliable, and we definitely believe that Veeam answers that question when it comes to data protection on your VMware virtual infrastructure. And I will lead a little bit to the future that Veeam will be supporting Hyper-V as well. So if that's in your mix, we will have you covered Q4 of this year. And when it comes to challenges related to backing up VMware virtual machines, same situation. The problems are out there, but they're not exactly glamorous, right? There's complexity. How do we manage our backups now that we're consolidated? Do we introduce a new bottleneck? All these different things that go along with consolidation. We can manifest problems in our backup solution. So with Veeam, we take a very VMware-centric approach. We fully support all the APIs. We do our backups in a very intelligent way, and we move data in a very intelligent way. On the ReadyNAS models that support iSCSI, for example, we can communicate directly to the iSCSI target. So when we do our backups, we don't move data through the ESXi stack. We don't move data through vCenter. We're going to communicate directly to the storage resource to allow for the most efficient backup. There's tons of features that go along with rethinking how we go about our backup. But most importantly, we also want to make sure that we don't take up too much storage space. Everyone I know that's gone virtual, myself included, the number of operating systems goes up. We may reduce the number of servers involved, but nonetheless, the OSEs or operating systems environments that we manage goes up. So when it comes to backing up all of these new workloads, we've increased our storage resources. So one feature that we have with Veeam Backup and Replication that can help reduce our storage utilization is deduplication on our backups. And that's actually free since version 1 was released in Q3 of 2008. So the deduplication isn't as aggressive as what you might see on a disk system, but we can do some academic examples of the dedupe that can really bring some amazing storage reduction on our backup resources. So, all these features have to be smart, right? We have to not introduce too much complexity. We can only support so much, right? We're all supposed to be experts of everything. So the complexity, again, to Drew's themes of simple, reliable, and affordable, that's a theme that follows through Veeam Backup and Replication. So when we go through the problem, and we kind of backfill with the solution, we really want to focus on the backup and the restore capabilities that go along with our VMware virtual machines. So, and specifically for Veeam Backup and Replication, one of the things we want to do is ensure that a backup is indeed reliable. And we're all familiar with the backup verification, right? So we take a backup with any old tool, then we do the verification, meaning I backed up what's there. That's good, but that's not exactly good enough. And let me give you an example to kind of maybe hopefully open your eyes and definitely set the tone of an opportunity to do more. We have to ensure that the virtual machine is indeed recoverable, and that's fundamentally different than the backup is verified. So what I mean by that is we can indeed restore the virtual machine, and then it's usable. So let me give you an example. If I have a Windows server running, and let's suppose I did a wild mouse click and deleted a hive of the registry, that virtual machine would stay running, yet it might not be in good shape. Further, I can back it up, and I can verify what I've backed up is what I've backed up, or what is running. That's good stuff. But the moment I go to restore it, it might not work correctly. Or if I reboot that virtual machine that's running, it might not reboot correctly. With Veeam Backup and Replication, we have a set of functionality we call vPower, which has a sure backup verification job, which can, in an automated fashion, verify that these virtual machines are indeed recoverable. And not just that they'll power on, but let me power it on, let me get the OS heartbeat, and let me make sure that my application is running, SQL Server or something like that. And then further, I can put scripts on there, entirely automated, to ensure that the application and the virtual machine are powered on and running as I would expect it should I need to restore. That's good stuff. I did mention deduplication earlier. We can definitely reduce the storage requirements associated with a virtual machine backup. And we also include replication. Now I want to take a moment and clarify the replication, because the product, Veeam Backup and Replication, may at first glance seem to be not in alignment with the NETGEAR ReadyNAS Replicate, but we definitely indeed see these as complementary solutions. So the replication component of Veeam Backup and Replication provides an inventoried and runnable virtual machine to another ESXi environment. Now that could be on-site for the absolute quickest type of restore situation, or it could be to a remote site. So if we have an ESXi vSphere environment in another location, we can replicate that virtual machine to the other location. ReadyNAS Replicate would move the backup files that we would land our backups on, that type of replication of the backup file. The takeaway is that you have options. And with Veeam and ReadyNAS storage systems, we can definitely protect to very, very granular levels without breaking the bank. All of that is good, but the restore is the most important part. I did mention vPower earlier. Another feature of vPower allows us to run a virtual machine directly from a backup in the event of a failure. So let's say a virtual machine is running along, and again, I'll pick on an administrator with the wild mouse click syndrome. Let's say that we accidentally delete a virtual machine, not just power it down, but accidentally delete it. What we can do with Veeam Backup and Replication version 5 is power that virtual machine on directly from the backup target. So if I've put my backups on the ReadyNAS and I have my virtual machine in there, I can find that point in time that I've backed it up, identify it in vCenter, and power it on. And the example I give is including the log and going through the wizard is around 1.5 minutes or 2. That's pretty quick. And that particular virtual machine is a 150 gig SQL Server virtual machine. From there, I can pick that virtual machine up and storage vMotion it back to primary storage. Or if I don't have that licensing in VMware, I can do a Veeam replication job. The takeaway is I have a lot more options with that virtual machine when it is running than when it is not. So vPower can do other different things. We can do item level recovery. We can recover an email message, an attachment. I can fire up a SharePoint environment and extract something that was removed out of SharePoint. I can test updates on different systems. We had one customer do their penetration test against the vPower environment instead of doing that security penetration test against the production environment. A whole new world of opportunity comes with vPower. And that's really where we position Veeam Backup and Replication, is really having the most options for your data protection solution for VMware virtual machines. And really, our thought process was that the existing tools weren't doing the job. Nobody likes agents. Okay, all this good stuff I've talked about. We don't have traditional agents that sit on the taskbar or a sys tray of a Windows system and take memory and are always running and need updates. We don't have that. We can automate the recoverability. Okay, try doing that with a traditional tool. Our cost scales really well. We're priced per ESXi socket. And, we don't have agents in the guest. We don't have agents on the host. And we fully support all the VMware platforms, ESX, ESXi, vSphere, all that good stuff. I will say vSphere 5 support is coming any moment via a hotfix in case anybody asks about that. But, we had to wait for the GA, going through the cycles. We will definitely see an update very soon on that. So that's Veeam in a nutshell. We've taken a fundamental approach from the ground up to design a backup and replication solution specifically built for VMware. Okay, so we don't really take any of the baggage that goes along with traditional backup solutions, agents, a complicated menu of, oh, you have SQL, well, we're going to need to charge you extra for that. No, not so much, not with Veeam backup and replication. So I'll start this discussion and just to kind of see how it looks. Okay, so on the left we have Veeam and your production virtual machines. And what we do is we either have the shared storage function as the primary storage, or it's the backup target. And that's an important takeaway of the ReadyNAS series. If you're definitely a small, medium, or, depending on your requirements, you can have the NETGEAR ReadyNAS function both as your primary storage or as your backup target. It's capable of doing both. In my lab, I've done both. It works well. And what you can do is take your backups and land them on the ReadyNAS, and then it starts to get really cool. And I'll turn it over to Peter to talk about the ReadyNAS replication.
So, thanks, Rick. So, ReadyNAS Replicate is an online cloud-hosted centralized portal where you can manage all your backups. And what the neat thing that you can do is if you have multiple ReadyNAS units, you can register them with the Replicate service, and then you can schedule backups, create backup jobs between the different ReadyNASs. Now, you'll see a cloud here in the reference architecture, and what that means is that the different ReadyNAS units, they could be anywhere on the internet. So whether it's in your LAN or if it's halfway across the world, it's a really reliable, simple, and affordable way to get all your backup data to another ReadyNAS offsite, just in case of a disaster at your primary site.
Hey, Peter, this is Drew. When I drew this, I might not have made it very clear. The data doesn't actually flow, isn't required to flow through the cloud portal, right?
No, it's not. So what the ReadyNAS Replicate service does is it acts as a facilitator. So it'll bridge the communication between the different ReadyNAS units. And after that has been established, the two ReadyNAS will actually communicate directly in its own secure AES encrypted VPN tunnel, and that's how the data then initiates and gets transferred from one ReadyNAS to the next. So you can see that there's a lot less overhead involved. Your data does not have to go from one ReadyNAS to the Replicate service and then to another ReadyNAS, whereas after the initial connection has been established, it's actually a direct point-to-point connection between the two ReadyNAS units.
So on the diagram, we've got the production VMs there in the lower left, and the Veeam server, which in this case we've indicated as a VM as well, and it's handling all the production VM backups, dropping them on a shared storage platform. And then the shared storage platform, in this case a ReadyNAS, a 1U in this corporate office, is replicating those backup files to a secondary location somewhere else for disaster recovery purposes. And based on what Rick has said about Veeam, the cool thing here is you can browse from the Veeam server across the WAN to that replication target, pick out the file you want to recover, and even kick it off and run it remotely, so your disaster recovery time is significantly shortened. Did I overstate anything there, Rick?
No, absolutely. The takeaway is you have options. Backups, two types of replications. It's a pretty strong solution.
So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Rich DePass just to give us a brief overview of what he implemented in his in a dental office out there in the Midwest.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Rich DePass, and I own my own company called Data Coordination. It was a company that I started about 7 years ago when I was actually taking a little break in between a couple other positions that I had. At that time, a very special client came up to me and posed me with some very difficult questions. The reason why I say a very special client is it actually is my brother that owns the dental office. So, you definitely want to make family happy.
You can't afford to make a mistake on that one, huh?
Exactly. You can't run away from a client like that. So what the issues that he was seeing, he had the traditional setup. It was a smaller office running small business server on a single box. Had the dental software running, had some imaging software running, and as we talk about data growth, doubling every 2 years, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about an engineering firm or whether you're talking about a dental office, that same type of thing happens. They will see x-rays are getting larger, they're getting more defined images, they take other type of images that need to be stored, and records grow as their client base grows. So I needed to find a dynamic way to grow that storage, as well as a good way to back it up. They were doing traditional tape backup at that time. Now, tape backup, anyone knows, not only do you have to maintain the tapes, but tape drives themselves will fail over time. And I was kind of brought into the mix at about year 4 and 5 of the practice, and they were starting to see some wear and tear. Tape drive was starting to fail. It's an expensive thing to fix. So I was posed with a lot of questions on how to get them from point A to point B. Number one, they didn't want to change tapes anymore. Number two, their software packages that they were running were now starting to grow to the point where the vendors were saying we would like this to run on its own server. We don't want this to run on a small business server. So they were going to have server creep. And we just needed to find a good way, like we say, we need options on how we're going to recover. Because I handle a lot of different clients anywhere between Wisconsin all the way out to Utah, and remote management is huge for me. I don't want to have to travel to each one of the clients. I want to be able to do something remote. So we looked at, I've used the ReadyNAS product for many, many years, all the way back to the NV Plus was my first one. And I've also implemented 1100s, 2100s. Hopefully I can continue on up the line, because they're great products. I implemented a 2100. This is a phased approach. I implemented a 2100, and I virtualized the box that they were on, because it did have enough hard drive and RAM. So I implemented the virtual machine, and I stored everything on that 2100, which gave me more drive space to actually move the VMware images over. All I needed to do on the local storage was have VMware. That also allowed me to implement a second server that I picked up for extremely cheap. And that way, if anything happened with that initial server, I could fail back to that second server and get them up and running. It was a Dell server, so it had the D-rack on it where I could do that remotely. And we tested that, and it worked. Now, just lately, they were ready to move on to the second phase, which was to get a brand new server. And because I'd already virtualized, moving to a brand new server, mounting those images was very painless. But I still had to deal with what I was going to do with the tape drive, because no longer did we want to deal with that. That's where Veeam and ReadyNAS Replicate came in. Traditionally, I was still doing backups as if it was standard machines with Backup Exec was the backup software I was using at the time. The recovery, if I would have had to recover something manually, was going to take a lot of time that I didn't really have. So now what I wanted to do was use Veeam, push those images, the backup images, back to that ReadyNAS 2100. But we still wanted a second storage area. So what I did was purchased an NVX box and tried it across the WAN link with ReadyNAS Replicate. And what we found at that point was they didn't have enough upload bandwidth, because it being a small office, all they had was a DSL line. So they were okay with bringing that NVX box in-house and putting it in an opposite corner of the building, so at least if something happened in the server room, there was still another storage area back there. And as Peter was saying, the ReadyNAS Replicate, all it does is it facilitates. So the backups with Veeam are very, very fast, and the Replicate job is also very fast because all I do is I kick that job off, and it will replicate back over. Now, it's a scheduled job. I don't have to kick it off manually. And the very nice part is Veeam sends me an email saying your backups work successfully, and Replicate sends me an email saying the replication process happened successfully. So I really have no management other than to watch those 2 emails come in the morning, and then if I see something had an issue, at that point I can take some action. So it really has been an excellent move. Again, it's a phased approach that I've taken with this as money is allowed, and eventually they do plan on upgrading their ISP service where they'll have more upload bandwidth. Then I'll take that additional NVX, move it to the doctor's house where then it can be a true offsite backup. Really sweet part is if I do need to recover anything, I get an email or a phone call, and I just remote in, pull off those files after I mount the image. No longer do I have to have someone put a tape in, do the inventory, pull my files off, and then do the recovery. So it's very fast, very effective, very affordable for both myself and the client.
Rich, that's superb. Thank you. I hope that with that generates a couple of questions from the audience. We'll have to check the tab and get back to it. This is an example, a perfect example of how far downstream data center technologies have been able to go. We're talking about essentially momentary disaster recovery, or in a matter of minutes rather than hours or days, for a company that has completely outsourced their IT infrastructure and management to a third party. We have additional case studies within the NETGEAR and Veeam fold that talk about this similar kind of operation in larger environments, traditional, more mid-market companies where perhaps they have EMC as the primary storage, they're backing up to disk on a NETGEAR rack mount system, and then replicating off-site. But it's all the same idea, and it's all the same reference architecture. So pick your price point, pick your capacity level, and pick your sophistication. The basic tenets hold the same across it all. I think now we should move next to some reality shots, some screenshots here. Peter Chen, I'm going to hand it back over to you to talk us through a little bit about what this looks like in real life. And we apologize, everyone. We'd love to have a live demo, but the tool that we're working with only supports screenshots. So here are the ideas.
Thank you, Drew. So there's Drew and Rick and Rich. We've all talked a lot about the joint Veeam and ReadyNAS solution. So now in the next few slides, Rick and I will go over how it really looks like, in real life. So the following screenshots were actually taken from Rick's lab environment, where he is actually running, over 100 VMs on a ReadyNAS 3100. The screenshot here is just, the LUNs, the iSCSI LUNs that he's created on the ReadyNAS. In addition to just using the ReadyNAS as a backup target for Veeam, he is also using it as primary storage for all his VMs. So I will hand this back to Rick, where he can talk about his really cool lab environment.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, this is just real quickly. We've configured those resources over iSCSI in that particular example. The takeaway on the previous slide is that it's very easy to configure. Likewise, then when you drop these virtual machine disk resources into vSphere, they show up as a normal virtual machine data store, like we see right here. Very straightforward, very easy. To the typical VMware resource, this is native stuff. Now I'm going to hopefully pick some interest for everyone. This is what it looks like within Veeam, and I've kind of broken the rules and given a screenshot of version 6, which will be out due later this year. But what we can do with Veeam Backup and Replication is we can make either an iSCSI target, which is what I have configured here, where the V drive, in particular, is used as a dedicated disk target, and this is where our backups will go. And the interesting part about version 6 is that we've decoupled this concept of a backup repository from the Veeam server, so we can really scale out. And then for the small environments, not a problem. We'll just stack all of those roles on one server like we've always done. Likewise, we can increase our options and go to a UNC path, so a CIFS share provided by the NETGEAR. ReadyNAS, again, play in the unified storage card, you have options. Very straightforward, very easy to use. And then lastly, ReadyNAS Replicate can integrate with these units, and I'll have Peter explain that.
Okay, so previously we went into like a high-level architecture explanation of how Replicate works. Now, you'll see this screenshot right here just shows you how easy and simple it is once you log in. So you register your ReadyNAS, you apply your license, you create an account, associate your different ReadyNAS devices with the Replicate portal, you log in, and this is what you'll see. You'll get an entire map of all the registered ReadyNAS units you have with your account. And what you can do is you not only can look at the status, like how much storage you have left, and what kind of unit that is, you can actually browse the file system of each ReadyNAS. And then what you'll do is just create a backup job, and you point out you want, let's say you want right here to back up some data from your San Jose ReadyNAS all the way to your Woburn ReadyNAS. And that process only takes about a minute. You specify the folders, you create how often you want it to happen, either daily, weekly, hourly, when do you want it to start, and then you hit apply, and that job is created. And at any time you can go in and just initiate the job, even if it's not according to the original schedule that you did. So it's a really simple way to get your backed up data or your production data off-site. And yeah, that's what it is in a nutshell, and we're really excited about it. And I think that should be the last slide, and I'll hand this back to Jason.
So excellent. So we're going to be starting a lot of good information there that we had, and judging by the number of questions, there were things that were very important. So, but before we begin today's Q&A, please fill out the feedback form that is opened up on your computer. To complete the form, please press the Submit Answer button at the bottom of the page. Thanks in advance for filling out the feedback form. Your participation in this survey allows us to better serve you. And now we actually are going to start with the Q&A portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your question into the text box located below the media player, then click the Submit Question button. First question comes from, looks like a customer or potential customer possibly. Are there best practices written somewhere for disaster recovery in small businesses? Rich, do you think you might want to start with that question?
Well, when I was implementing that, I would say there weren't definite best practices out there. What I did was I found the solutions that I needed, and I will go to say, as far as say, that both NETGEAR with the ReadyNAS products, that team, as well as Veeam, excellent support. As I was going along, anytime I asked any questions, they were very helpful, and the implementation on both sides was excellent.
Yeah, so to add to this, I guess the general rule of thumb is to have as much redundancy and as many copies of your critical data as possible. So as Rick also mentioned, with Veeam, you can have many ways to not only back up but also replicate your virtual machines. And then with the ReadyNAS, we have the built-in redundancy. And so just follow that rule of thumb, get a lot of redundancy and copies of your data in different locations, and you should be good.
I'll add to that real quickly. One of the things that Veeam does on the kind of the resource side is we provide a number of thought leadership webinars and white papers at Veeam.com and click on the resources tab. You can download a lot of those different things, and my recommendation is, take a lot of them and find the points you want, craft the plan that fits your needs.
And that's a good point too, Rick. We've put together jointly a best practices guide or an application note that talks about how the two things work together. We've got a couple of different case studies specific to ReadyNAS and Veeam, one of which is the one that Rich DePaz is talking about here, as well as some of the higher level ones. So jump on our website at netgear.com, check out readynas.com for the forums in particular is a great resource. And if you have a direct question, then of course reach out to our sales team. We'd be happy to get you some of those materials in your hands.
Excellent. Just a reminder of folks, if we don't get to your question today, we will try to follow up with an email after the seminar. We are getting lots of questions, which is good, so don't be intimidated about sending them in. Next question, if a ReadyNAS goes offline because of a network or fault, will the portal still have a record of the files info on the offline ReadyNAS? Peter, I think that seems like it would be appropriate for you to maybe start with that.
I believe the answer is no, because the ReadyNAS, as I mentioned before, the Replicate portal is a facilitator, so it does not record, sort of like snapshots of the ReadyNAS file system. So if the ReadyNAS goes offline, then it's unreachable.
You're right, Peter. This is Drew, but I'm not sure we understand the question exactly, Ryan. So there's another answer to that, which is, and maybe just an architecture explanation would suffice. The Replicate jobs exist in the portal, so we know what was tracked, what was backed up, and what was intended to be sent or last accomplished when the job was run. We do not have a copy in the cloud of all your data. In fact, that's not at all what we're trying to do. All we're doing is tracking the activity in the cloud. So the data is offline, since your target ReadyNAS would be offline. But as far as what the job record was and the last time it completed and what stuff went over, that still survives in the cloud if your target ReadyNAS is offline. Hope that clarifies it, and feel free to pipe back up if we need to go address that again.
Great, thanks for that clarification. Next question looks like it's for you, Rick. They want to know pricing. How much is the base Veeam system cost, and what sort of pricing or price range?
The inevitable price question. I'm not authorized to speak price, but I'll give you the generic answer. It is priced per ESX or ESXi socket. Okay, so we don't care about how many VMs are above. We did release the MSRP for the standard and enterprise versions in our press release. Again, I'm not authorized to quote that. I will say if you are a nonprofit, there is a discounted pricing program. Check with your reseller. They can get you the price, but it's definitely competitive, and it scales really well by being priced per socket.
Do you have a trial, Rick, that's available?
That's a good point. Yeah, there is a free 30-day trial available at Veeam.com where you can get a fully functional, I believe it's either 16 or 32 socket license for that time. That's the best way to find out if it's the right solution for you.
All right, next question, bandwidth requirements. What are the bandwidth requirements for replication? How much bandwidth would be required to try to replicate data? Peter, do you think you might have some insight into that for us?
Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there are no real bandwidth requirements for replicate. Obviously, if you're trying to replicate through the WAN, in most cases it's going to go a little more slower compared to if you're just trying to replicate between ReadyNAS units within the same LAN. So there are no hard bandwidth requirements. So the faster your pipe, the faster the backup will go. I guess that's it.
Yeah, that's true, but that's an easy answer for us as vendors to give. The reality is, as Rich experienced, the thinner the pipe, the longer the backup's going to take. So the real problem here is your initial backup job. When you start from scratch, when you got a big pile of data, you got to move it to the secondary location, that's going to be the massive task. So the best practice is, if you don't have a big pipe, do the shoe leather limousine method, put the boxes side by side, let them do their initial sync. The cool part about this is since Replicate is in the cloud, it knows what happened. And when you plug the remote device in the remote location, it just checks to see what's happened in between. And if nothing's happened, there's no sync. It just waits for the next job, synchronizes the changes. So you don't get hammered with a big glob of data trying to push through a little thready pipe. So that would be the best practice method. As Peter alluded to, if you're fortunate enough to have either big pipes between your locations on your WAN, or if you're doing this on a LAN, maybe on a campus location, or even in Rich's example, within the same office, physically different locations, then you really don't have to worry about bandwidth.
Very good. On to the next question. This one looks like it's for you, Rich. So in this page, the tunnel is between the shared storage and the replication target?
That's actually a Peter Chen question. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. Rich, feel free to answer it in your specific scenario if you'd like.
Well, and I was going to allude to what Peter had said, too. The way the dotted line is there, that's a communication portion of it. The Replicate server out in the cloud, that's getting you a status, and that's what's setting up the jobs and taking care of creating that tunnel between the two ReadyNAS devices. Once that's created, all the communication is going directly between those two devices. The only thing going back up is a status. You can actually watch what files are being replicated over at the time, and then that will report back with an email if you would like, or however, to give you that final status of job failure or success.
Peter, did you want to add anything on that, or you think it's been covered? Or?
Oh, no. I think it's been covered pretty well by Rich.
Okay, great. Next question looks like it's for you, Rick. Can you schedule low-level incremental backups of currently executing virtual machines with control over processing overhead limits?
Let me kind of rephrase that a little bit. Our incremental backups are incredibly smart. For VMware environments, we support VMware changed block tracking, which allows a incremental backup to proceed with the least amount of work. Basically, the platform provides us the blocks of the VMDK that have changed. So what happens is the processing overhead is dramatically reduced, both on the data transfer part as well as the cleanup part that goes on after the backup job is done. So by reducing the amount of work, we really kind of most efficiently approach that backup, all the while trying to reduce the amount of time it takes for a backup. I will lead a bit into the future that when Hyper-V support comes out for Veeam backup and replication, the change block tracking equivalent functionality, we have actually made that for Hyper-V. So we will have our own change block tracking implementation for Hyper-V virtual machines. Again, same design principle. We're going to perform the backup with the quickest amount of time, least amount of impact to the environment, and move on.
Okay, great. Next question, data duplication. Is it built into your products? I think that's something that, Peter, you might want to start with.
Okay, so at this point in time, we rely on the software side of things, such as the dedupe that's built into Veeam to perform data deduplication. However, we are working on building dedupe directly into the ReadyNAS. So that's going to come out sometime next year.
Okay, great. Seems like next one might be up your alley as well, Peter. Does the ReadyNAS support iSCSI? How about NFS?
The ReadyNAS supports both iSCSI and NFS, and not only that, it can you can create iSCSI LUNs, NFS shares at the same time, and that's why we call it unified storage.
That question also has to do with VMware. VMware will run both over iSCSI and NFS. We're certified with VMware, Hyper-V, and Citrix, for that matter, on all those platforms, all those protocols. But Peter's correct. We support multiple file and block protocols at the same time from the same device. So to what Rick alluded to earlier, whatever works for you is what you can do with the platform, meaning that pretty simple to get your job done, whatever's comfortable for you.
And one more thing on the unified storage is you can actually do that with the same disks. So some certain, different storage systems may have different requirements, but you don't have to make a parent container for these different protocol buckets. So you could, in my case, I've got 4 physical disks that are serving CIFS, iSCSI, and I can even drop NFS, and I don't have to have separate parent logical disks to do that.
Good point.
Great. Looks like we're going to be approaching the top of the hour. Maybe at this point, any last-minute comments? Maybe we can start with you, Drew.
I just want to thank everyone for coming. We're delighted to be able to feature, I really especially want to thank Rich, that for us as vendors to have the real-life experience and, not just taking our word for it, because we have an agenda here, but Rich's job is pretty impossible. He's got to keep his brother happy. He's got to keep that system up and running. And I would venture that it's not his primary job, so it's his secondary job. So it's a pretty complicated mixture, but reality in the small, medium business market and in the mid-market segment. So thanks, Rich, and thanks for everybody else for having us on here.
Anyone else? Last-minute comments?
Well, and I got to thank our folks at Veeam if they're not going to speak up. Rick, we really appreciate having you here.
Drew, it's hard to top that. Thank you, guys. Thank you for letting me be on Veeam.com, the blog, the podcast, the webinars, white papers. Love to see you there. Cheers.
Well, for more information related to today's webcast, you can please visit any of the information links that are opening before you. Within the next 24 hours, you will receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. Additionally, you can view today's event on demand by visiting www.netseminar.com. Thank you for attending today's webcast, Optimizing Backup and Disaster Recovery for Your VMware Environment, brought to you by Information Week and NETGEAR. This webcast is copyrighted 2011 by United Business Media, LLC. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted, if that's the case, Information Week and NETGEAR, who are solely responsible for its contents, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of our guests, Drew Meyer, Peter Chen, Rick Vanover, and Rich DePaz, I'm Paul Kowazanowski. Thanks for your time, and have a great day.